Hello, Internet world. This is the Bearded Bible Thinker podcast here, and I'm Rob, the Bearded Bible Thinker. I had a conversation with Tanner and Marshall not too long ago. These are a couple of other elders at our church, and we talked about Christianity and politics and some of the things to consider as we're all walking through this time in our nation together. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation, and we'll pick up next time. What are some, so we talked about a couple of them just in that last barrage of things. One of them being emperor worship, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is one of the pitfalls that Christians can fall into in our nation. Or mistaken identity, right? Like your identity's in Christ and that's it. What are some of the other pitfalls? What are some of the other things that, given our culture right now, given like the crazy that's going on, what are some other things that maybe in your own life or that you see happening elsewhere as you look around in Christian circles or whatever? What are some things that people need to be aware of?
I think relying too much on the government or putting their faith in the government, I guess I should say. You know, most of us will say, "Oh, we don't trust the government." But how often are we like, "Well, you know, this year's election will fix that," or this and that, you know? Instead of looking to God's word and what He says in the Bible, He talks about He's gonna, you know, how often were the Israelites always in bondage or being ruled by pagans or whatever? Yeah. Because they themselves adopted the culture which was around them. So, you know, I think that's a thing of not putting our faith in the God of the Bible and realizing He's in control. Even if we don't get why it's happening, He is in control. He, like I said earlier in Daniel, He removes kings and He raises kings. No different than presidents. He'll raise a president and He'll take him down, you know, and I think that's one thing where we, yes, we need to get out there, vote, and do our part to have a more godly world if we can affect the change for that. But also remember that it's not in man or the government our trust is, it's in God.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I think tying in with what you said is I think there's a tendency to look at just having an idea that there's a separation between religion and government, in the sense that it's easy to think you have one set of issues that the government fixes and another set of issues that being a Christian fixes. But really, like you were just saying, being a Christian, that's what fixes the whole thing. And then it just naturally flows out into the government. I seen in our own town, I seen a flag that says it had a cross on it, American flag, and it said, "The world needs Jesus, America needs Trump." And
oh my gosh,
you know, America needs Jesus too. You know, my first thought with that was like, yeah, okay, Trump can't fix anything. That's it, period. He can't fix anything. But Christ can fix everything. And, yeah, that was just, I think that's probably an attitude that a lot more people have that was depicted in that flag than we would like to think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think one thing that I've seen, and probably not word for word, right? I don't think I've seen anyone actually verbatim say something like this, but I think that we have to remember as Christians that the Great Commission is not save America.
Yeah.
I fought for this country. I sometimes don't sleep well because I fought for this country. It's not that I'm not a patriot. I want this country to survive and do well, and I want it to be good, and I want it to be safe and all the things. So don't hear me saying, "Oh, he hates America." No. But America is expendable in the grand scheme of things. In the most grand scheme of things, America is one nation in a history of cajillions of other nations, and our Great Commission is not save America. I think that we should do the things that we can that are within reach to help our nation benefit and move in good directions, good and godly and helpful directions. But I think sometimes we as Christians get distracted from the actual mission because we're too busy with politics.
Yeah.
And so where's Christ? Where is preach Christ and him crucified? Where is not ashamed of the gospel? The gospel of who? Trump? No. The gospel of Christ. We have to, I think that's a pitfall. I think that's a pitfall that I actually see people falling into at times. Doesn't mean we don't want to save America. It just means that that's not the ultimate goal. We should long to save America so that we will see Christ save people.
Yeah.
And nothing more. I mean, at the end of the day, that's the goal. Of course, we want his kingdom to your will be done in heaven, here as it is in heaven, right? We want his kingdom to come. And so we want to do all the things that we can to make this neighborhood, this city, this state, or whatever, reflect that.
Yeah.
However, it's about souls. That's the job. Make disciples, and baptize them and teach them the law of God. Teach them how to live. So we can't. I think we can lose that. And I think the other pitfall that I see is the two that I thought of that I wanted to talk about. The other one is, I think sometimes, have you guys seen The Matrix?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think sometimes we view the people, just because they're part of the Matrix right now, they're expendable. You know what I mean? Just because they're part of the system, or they're the person that's got colored hair and a young person with colored hair and freaking out and crying on TikTok or whatever because of some liberal thing, and we automatically, I think, go whatever, and don't ever, like, that's still an image bearer of God.
Yeah.
It still should sadden us that this is the state. It should either, this is maybe this is the main gist of the point. It should either bother me that person, the example I used, that it should bother me that person it doesn't know Christ, or that it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
One or the other. And so I think sometimes we are, this is one of the reasons that I think Christians come off really hard and like, I don't care about you. My agenda is what matters. I think sometimes we come off that way because we are that way.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be. So I mean, those are the couple of things that I see, because I'm, being on X and wasting my life there and other places. But even in our own town, though, like, we're in a very conservative part of the nation.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to look at this person or that person, or even the famous people, like the names. It's a lot easier for me or someone else to look at, like, Pelosi or somebody and just be like, oh, just all the things in my heart, but pray for her. Oh God, that she would know you. Like, does that come to mind at all?
Yeah. Well, I think sometimes that the perception, like what you were talking about, is kind of the thing. Like, for example, John Cooper. First look at him, he looks like a punk rock dude most of the time. But you wouldn't think that guy is very sound theology. And when he starts talking, will shock you that that guy is, I listened to his podcast and stuff, and at first, as a Skillet fan, I started listening just because I was a fan of his, not thinking I actually find great, but I was curious to what he had to say. But he's actually, very solid, and sometimes I think we have the persona of, nothing against you, Rob, but a pastor that gets up on Sunday with a suit and tie and speaks absolutely nothing. I'm not saying that's you.
Should I throw back to Jeff and wear a Hawaiian shirt?
Yes.
But the point is sometimes our perception on stuff is the point I'm trying to get at.
Yep.
Maybe we do need to remember that, like you said, these are image bearers. Just because they look like they have it all together doesn't mean they have it all together.
Yeah.
And vice versa, but.
And I think it's so easy also to, if you're wanting to be outward in your faith and you're wanting to see a Christian nation, even, the tendency, I think, for a lot of people is to turn godliness into a means to an end. Like godliness for the sake of a Christian nation,
not
whatever.
a change of heart.
Yeah, rather than the Christian nation really technically would just be the byproduct of just being a Christian. That was just what would naturally happen. Yeah.
And that's the accusation that a lot of that surrounds a lot of the Christian nationalism fighting, right?
Yeah.
Is some of that kind of because there's a group of folks who think that Christian nationalists mean let's go buy a bunch of AKs or whatever and take this baby, right? And put the 10 Commandments and you know what I mean? Like
right.
That some people, that's the craziest thing. Like, I don't know anyone who thinks that has weight behind them or a following really. A significant following. Like, I know someone is going to see this and be like, well, but you haven't heard of, but look, just no one that matters in society, like significantly, makes that kind of claim. The other and more prevalent thing that I see in that argument is people, like Doug Wilson and others who would say, yes, legislate the law of God, theonomy kind of thinking, right? It should be the law of the land, but even he, and I've heard him talk about it several times. Even he would say that a Christian nation happens because people believe the gospel and are changed in their heart.
Right.
People have new hearts, and that's what actually creates the Christian nation that they speak of. I don't know anyone who actually believes that you can legislate.
Yeah.
Heart change.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I heard someone debating with Doug Wilson one time on theonomy.
That's always good.
Yeah. And they asked him a question, something along the lines of, would you force people to commit to a law that's made by God in the Bible if they're not Christians, or do you think that's morally acceptable? Or somehow, the idea of forcing God's law on people. And he asked this question to him, do you think this would be a good idea? And he said, well, if the people want it, I do. Because that's the idea, is that everybody would the law of God would be written on their hearts. So this is what we would like. We would like to have God's law in the government because we love God.
Yep.
It's not trying to force people to love God because you have to.
Yeah.
Even though you do have to, but.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that biblical legislation should be a thing. But unless it's a thing because there are biblical men and women, godly men and women who want it, and are ready to adhere to it, and are ready to, for the government to enforce it, right? I mean, it's about the heart. Like at the end of the day, it's always been about the heart. And even in the Old Testament, how many times does God have to say, "Well, circumcise your heart"? Well, your offerings don't mean anything to me; they're an abomination.
Yeah.
Your sacrifices are worthless. You set them up.
Yeah.
What are you talking about, right? But what he's talking about is you're just doing it. You don't care. It's empty. It's not even actually a sacrifice because you could care less. It's a formality. It's a check in the box, right? So it's about the heart. It's always been about the heart. Yeah.
And I think also another thing just to throw in there is just because we're sinful and our hearts are off, and that makes things look bad when you think about like when I mentioned people having that a lot of times sinfully, you could have the tendency to want to use Christianity as a means to a gain if you're thinking about it sinfully. That doesn't mean you shouldn't have the Christian laws or anything like that. Just because sinfully people would do it wrong doesn't mean you don't do it. That just means don't do it sinfully.
Yeah. Well, you'd never do anything.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like saying, well, don't give that person money. You know, like if you see somebody in need, don't give them anything unless you're doing it with the right heart. If you don't want to be seen by man at all, and you have perfect intentions, and there's no maliciousness in you whatsoever, then give it to them. You like you said, you would never do it. Mm-hmm. You'd never do it.
Yeah. We would literally just never do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because every intention of the heart
Is simple.
is only evil continually.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so how let's start the wrap up, right? So how are you if at all, okay? We'll leave a little bit of room for you to be prideful and not have anything to say. How are you guys? Yep.
What's wrong with you people?
Okay, RC. How are you guys growing? What are is there anything that's going on in the nation or any of the crazy that's going on right now that is forcing you, like growth on you or you know what I mean? I can go first.
Yeah, I can go.
All right, go.
Something that I think this has brought out.
Now I'm
in
worried
me-
you guys are going to take mine.
Yeah.
Then I won't have anything.
I heard Paul Washer use an example one time. I'm sure other people have used this too, of a jar that has like, an inch of dirt in the bottom, and then the rest is filled with water. The water looks pretty clean until you shake it up. Then you have some dirty water, it's just sitting there still. Anyway, seeing all this stuff happening, and once you start thinking about it, and it's not just a concept, but it's actually something happening that you're seeing, like in your own country and stuff. I think it's really easy, I've noticed in myself, to have the tendency to be making quick judgments about people, or especially public figures, I guess. You hear about something that they're associated with and immediately come to a judgment on them instead of realizing that they could probably just have an inconsistency. Like, for instance, I guess I haven't done this one particularly, but it's something I thought of. If you saw someone shopping at Target, does that immediately give you an assumption about the kind of person they are? Because, you walk through the doors of Target a
Now
couple
you're
years
woke.
ago. Yeah, exactly. So you automatically woke because you bought something at Target, or maybe you just don't realize. Maybe you didn't think about it, or whatever. Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
There's such a thing, I think, as the being on the conservative side of cancel culture, canceling just the other things.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real tendency because you see so many people doing it, and you want to hold firm to the truth. It's hard not to get into that mindset of canceling people or canceling things because you see what they're doing.
Yeah, I think so the most recent thing like that I've seen is and Donna was actually talking about it just the other day, is the Olympics thing has happened, right? The opening deal happened. That's where all the first fireworks started, right? With the whole thing. That was the opening ceremony. And you saw immediately Christians who were like, not watching the Olympics ever again.
Yeah.
Right? You have Christians who were like, I'm not watching the Olympics so that LA's going to know. Right?
Yeah.
The ratings. They'll feel the ratings. You have Christians going, giving lists of, okay, here are the Christian athletes. Let's support them. So they're just there are three different views, and there were more, right? But, and Christians began arguing with one another, you can't be a Christian and think this. It's kind of, and no one said that, but it's like, at least not that I saw. But this is the attitude. It's like there actually can be other viewpoints.
Yeah.
You're actually not Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? Now, it's good to have a viewpoint. It's good to even have a strong viewpoint.
Yes.
But it's not good to just assume that, on the one hand, like you mentioned, that the other person is automatically in default somehow, or not a Christian, or even maybe it's not even that they're inconsistent. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah. Exactly.
Ooh, there's some news, right? Like that happened with the Olympics thing. What you're talking about, there are Christians fighting about that right now, I'm sure, online. Yeah.
Yep.
And if you don't do it the way that I'm doing it, then you're obviously wrong. Right?
Yeah. Well, and another one a while back was Netflix.
Yep.
When Netflix started showing child pornography, or the one show of it.
We canceled it right away.
Yeah.
Same here.
I did too.
Yep. But I know Christians right now that have Netflix.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say you're not a Christian if you have Netflix.
I'm going to say G3 Plus.
Yeah, exactly. Get something better.
Yeah. Ay. Marshall, you got something?
Yeah.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. Okay, go.
So for me, something that's been coming out of this is not that we weren't being intentional about teaching our girls, stuff, but this kind of made me think of the story in 2 Kings with Elisha and his servant. And his servant walks out and he sees the army surrounding them, and he walks in. He goes tells Elisha, what are we going to do? We're surrounded. And Elisha prays and says, ask God to open his servant's eyes. And I want to be intentional. This has made me think about being more intentional with the girls about what they could be dealing with. It's not just teaching them the stuff, which that's important. We need to be doing our, being intentional about teaching them, the things and the ways of God, but also being, hey, you may have to deal with this as much as they can't understand. My oldest is 8, so trying to have her understand that there's people that aren't going to like her because she claims the name of Christ. There's going to be, the reason why, people are mean in this world are granted, there can be some Christians that have a mean moment or whatever, but, we're in a fallen world, and because we're Christians and stuff, we act this way, we do these things, but also remember that, they hated Christ, so they're going to hate you too.
Yeah.
So, I'm kind of, that's what I've been coming out of this, is that I hope that, in the same way Elijah asked that God would open his servant's eyes, kind of, that I'll be able to prepare my girls so they can see that God is in control, that they'll see that we are surrounded by God's chariots, God's angels, that, that he is sovereign, that he is in control, even though it doesn't seem like it, because, like I said, like we've been talking about, I pray that we have a revival in the United States. I pray that we can have a nation that comes back to Christ. That is one of my greatest hopes that we'll see, especially for my kids. But I also have to be a pessimist or a realist and realize that we're just going to keep going down and down, more than likely. Like we said, there's other nations that have cease to exist. The United States could be one of them. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but
wow, bro.
I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer, but I also want my kids to be prepared. I want them to be ready and prepared for what could happen. Mm-hmm. I hope it doesn't. I hope we have a 180 and this country becomes just like it was in, its earlier days.
But even better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like we talked about in the beginning, I want them to be ready and I want them to be prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. The good old days have yet to come. We're waiting on him to show up again, I think, for the good old days. So for me, I think, so first of all, thanks for not taking mine. I think that this is something that I think a lot of people share, but it's one thing for us as Christians, particularly in the Reformed camp. We like to talk about this all the time. Began the episode with reading some verses about the sovereignty of God over the situation. It's one thing for us to say those things over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. It's another thing entirely to put our money where our mouth is when like so many in the world are freaking out now. It's something entirely different for the Christian to go, it's just another day. God's in control, and live like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's always a good test when the world is going crazy, and it could just be a life situation, right? A loved one dies, or many things could bring this, right? But I remember a story, and I won't forget it now, about MacArthur when his wife was in an accident, like life-threatening, bad accident. Truly didn't know if she was going to live or not. I think she was in surgery or something. And he and one of his daughters, I think was grown at the time, were in the hospital. His daughter beat him there or something, I think. And I'm probably butchering the story, but the short version is she's kind of freaking out, right? And like most people would go, yeah, it's going to be okay, or whatever, right? When MacArthur is basically says to his daughter, when his wife is in surgery in the other room, maybe won't live, do you believe that God is sovereign, right? Yeah. Well, then act like it. That's some crap that only he would do.
Yeah.
But it illustrates the point.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's an area that I see will be hopefully there will be plenty of people who kind of have, because that's a thing that reveals, I think, how we act reveals where our security actually lies, like you were talking about earlier, Marshall. And so I'm thinking that if this is going on in the nation and the wars are happening and you're kind of at the beginning of freak out mode, and that's a good indicator then, right? Like trust in the Lord because he's the one that's in control. Vladimir Putin isn't. Zelensky isn't. Iran isn't. Biden isn't. Whichever one knows. Harris is, sorry. Almost made it through. Harris isn't. Trump isn't, and isn't gonna be. Like, God is in control. That's it. That's the end of the sentence, paragraph, book, period. So, yeah. Anything else you guys want to yak about? Any last things? Oh, last things. See, I began and ended with it. Last things. All right, well, I want to end with this. Why did the nations rage? Tanner, why did the nations rage? Why did the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers take counsel together against Yahweh and against his anointed, saying, let us tear their fetters apart and cast away their cords from us. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord mocks them. Then he speaks to them in his anger and terrifies them in his fury, saying, "But as for me, I have installed my king upon Zion, my holy mountain. I will surely tell of the decree of Yahweh. He said to me, 'You are my son. Today I have begotten you. Ask of me, and I will surely give the nations into your inheritance, as your inheritance, and the ends of the earth as your possession,'" not anyone else's, just Christ's. "You shall break them with a rod of iron. You shall shatter them like a potter's vessel. So now, O kings, show insight. Take warning, O judges of the earth. Serve Yahweh with fear and rejoice with trembling. Kiss the Son, lest he become angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath may soon be kindled. How blessed are all who take refuge in him."